Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Shauna from Created and Made, and today, if you like grungy gel prints like I do, then this is the video for you. I used to think that achieving grunge on my gel prints was happenstance. It could only happen serendipitously or accidentally, but today I'm going to show you how you can get the grunge that you want anytime you want by showing you how you can make it happen on purpose. Fun stuff ahead. Stay tuned. Before we get started, I want to tell you guys the key to achieving grunge. Now, probably like a lot of you, if you like grunge, sometimes you just get it and it's serendipitous and you don't quite know how it happened, but you love it. But how do you create grunge on purpose? Now, the main thing that you must do to create a grungy look is to have your paint break. Now, what do I mean by break? I mean this. I mean, there are striations, there are breakups in the application of the paint in a way that the print you pull looks grungy. Now, this is a smooth application, obviously not so grungy, and this is a broken application. Now, there are several different ways you can get paint to break. I'm going to show you a couple ways that are artificial, meaning it's you doing the breaking, and then there's at least one way that you can get paint to break naturally, and I'm going to show you that as well. One of the ways that you're going to be able to get a paint to break up sort of pseudo-naturally is by using a newer gel plate. Now, this one is almost brand spanking new. It's only been used a few times, whereas this one has been used for a couple years now, right? And you can clearly see the difference in the coloration. But what you're going to get with a new gel plate is sort of I think it's mineral oils that they use to make the plate that are still sort of on the surface, more so than one that has been used over and over again. Now, I'm just going to demonstrate this really quickly by using the same exact paint on each plate, and I'm going to show you what each one will look like once you roll it out and pull it. This is Fluid Acrylic in Paints Gray by Liquitex. I'm going to do about 9 drops on each, 9 or 10. Okay, so this one on the old plate, as you can see, I mean, it's going to have some natural sort of itty bitty texture bits in there simply because it's a fluid acrylic, and fluid acrylic sort of breaks up like that anyway. But when you compare it to the texture that you get on the newer plate, you can really see that difference. I mean, this one just sort of breaks up a lot more than the one on the older plate. So if you have a new or new-ish plate, you'll notice that you'll tend to get more grunge, more striations, more breakup than if you're using an older plate. Now, all new plates will become old one day. So do you have to go out and buy a new plate to get this effect? You don't. I'm going to show you next how you can get the same sort of breakup on an older plate. One way that you can mimic this sort of breaking up and beating up effect that you're going to get on a new gel plate when you don't have a new gel plate is to use a little bit of baby oil. Now, baby oil is safe to use on your plate. I've used it many times. Actually, Jelly Arts, I've seen on Jelly Arts' website that they recommend it to use for cleaning off like oil pastels or oil-based mediums, I believe. I've also used it to clean off pan pastels because they can be really stubborn to get off of your plate. So it's safe to use. And a couple of things you want to keep in mind, though, is that you're going to be using a brayer to brayer the baby oil on. So you're going to have a brayer that is oily. So you want to stick it on anything that you don't want to get oil onto. Additionally, your print is probably going to have some greasiness showing on the back of it. And so if you have anything on the back of your print, you want to keep that in mind. Finally, the oil itself will dissipate really quickly. after the first or second pull of paint, you're not going to really have the oil effect anymore. You can get it off of your brayer by rolling it off, continuing to gel print. That'll make it go away as well. Or you can speed it up by using some isopropyl alcohol and a cloth to sort of clean it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 different plates so you can see exactly what it looks like without the oil and what it will look like with the oil. I am going to be using a heavier body paint. This is the Liquitex Basics, so you know that any breakup that you see is due to the oil and not because it is a fluid acrylic paint. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a thin layer of the oil on this plate. Now I'm going to do maybe 10 or 11 drops to have enough to cover the plate. I'm going to just brayer this out, just a thin layer. Now you might not be able to see it. Maybe you can because it does look shinier. But I'm just rolling out a thin layer to cover the whole plate. You don't want a ton of it. You don't want it just dripping or puddling or anything like that. Just a nice layer of coverage. Now, I'm going to use 2 different brayers so I don't contaminate the other side. And I'm just going to roll out some paint on this side and then pull the print so you can see the comparison. I'm gonna go ahead and let that sit, and I'll pull it off right before I pull this one. Now, the thing you want to keep in mind with the oil is that the more paint you use, like the more you sort of pile the paint up, the less of the grunge effect you're going to see, because some of that paint is not going to be in contact with the oil, but you'll be able to see it almost immediately. And you can see how this is beating up, it's breaking up, and it's breaking up in a way that I find pretty interesting, actually. It's different than just using a fluid paint. It is truly grungy. Now, if I wanted to add more paint on this, what I would end up doing is sort of covering some of this, because that second layer of that additional paint is really just going to be sitting on top. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and pull this as is so you can get the full grunge effect and compare it to this one that has nothing. Now, I don't know if you can see, but I'm seeing a little bit of that grease sort of staining the paper, or the oil staining the paper. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't harm anything, but just something to keep in mind. So that, my friends, is very grungy. Whereas this one is just a normal print. Same paint, same old plates, just a little bit of baby oil makes the difference. So in the same line as the baby oil, you can also make great grunge texture using petroleum jelly. Now, this is the Vaseline brand, the cocoa butter variety, but you don't need either of those. You can just use regular petroleum jelly. And what this does is it creates a resist so that when you pull the print, it sort of blocks off the paint in the areas where the petroleum jelly has been applied. Now, you want to be careful with this. Obviously, if you don't like greasy stuff, I hate greasy stuff, by the way. I hate it. So the fact that I've been doing these greasy techniques, it's kind of funny, but it doesn't migrate. You know, it will come off the plate within 1 or 2 pulls. The same with your brayer. If you roll it off, throw that roller sheet in the trash, you're good to go. Like, it doesn't get all over the place, and it doesn't harm your gel plate. Now, because I have not dedicated this for craft use, I am getting it out of the container with this butter knife. I'm going to return this Vaseline to my little boys. All their cuts and boo-boos require immediate Vaseline, apparently. So what you want to do is just want to sort of scrape it on, and then you're going to brayer it out. Now, the finer this application, meaning the more you roll it, the finer the grunge pattern will be. That is wet. And to be honest, I don't like mine to be too fine. I still like it to have a bit of globbiness in there somewhere. So I'm not going to roll it out too much. That is wet too, apparently. So I'm not going to start over, whatever. My brayer had some gold paint in it, so you're going to see some gold in my print. Anyway, I just roll it out a little bit. I don't want to roll it out too much because I like some of the globbiness to remain in the print. And to sort of deal with this, actually, I'm not going to waste this petroleum jelly. I'm going to roll it onto another gel plate so I can take another print. And then I'm going to roll it off onto this extra sheet of paper to sort of get rid of the greasiness of it all. So I did have to go ahead and clean off my brayer off camera because if you just leave it, whatever wet paint you have on there is not going to dry if you also have petroleum jelly on there. And I have been playing with this technique for a little bit, so that's what had happened. And so I just cleaned it off with a cloth and some isopropyl, and it's just fine. Like, it's pretty dry now. So just FYI. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna roll this out like I'm pulling print, but the top print is not the print that I am after. I am going to be after what is left on the plate, basically after I pull this top print off. So let me roll this out, and then I'm gonna pull it off. So since this is not the print that I'm after, I'm just going to pull it, the top layer off with this piece of scrap paper. And see what you have. And I mean, this is honestly, it's kind of grungy. You could use this too. But what you have left on the plate is what I'm after. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the paint dry. Like the petroleum jelly, which is still here in places, that's not going to dry. But I'm going to let the paint dry, and then I'm going to pull the print off and deal with the petroleum jelly at that point. Okay, the paint is dry, but like I said, the petroleum jelly is never going to dry. So just be clear on that what you have there is still wet. So I'm going to take this pearl chartreuse, and I'm just going to pull the print as usual. Treat it like a normal print. I cleaned off my brayer with some isopropyl alcohol and a cloth. So I just give it a few sprays and a few wipes, and it's good to go. I'm just going to, like I said, roll this out like a regular print. Okay, so remember when I brayered off my extra petroleum jelly onto my 5x7 plate, which I have over here? Well, this is the print I got off of that. You can see very grungy, very beautiful. This isn't greasy either. So once, I'm going to show you, once you take the print, I mean, you can see that the grease is sort of permeated through to the back of the print, but it's not greasy, if that makes any sense. Let's see what this looks like. It looks like grunge paradise. Oh my goodness. Oh my god, I love that. And I even see that gold that was on my brayer when I started, and that's fine too. Oh my goodness, this came out beautiful. I mean, this chartreuse with the Prussian blue, I mean, those combinations are really beautiful together. But so now what? Is there any grease on the front of this? There is. Like, you can feel it. There's some there because it was pretty blotchy in places. So all I'm going to do is give this a chance to fully dry because that pickup paint is not necessarily fully dry. And then I'm just going to wipe the petroleum jelly off with a clean cloth. Okay, so the next way that you can easily create a grungy texture on the gel plate is using a watery paint. And I am using here a tube watercolor that I got from Hobby Lobby in the color sepia. Now, this can work with any kind of watery paint that you have. And by watery, I just mean something that is a light body, it's thin, it's kind of runny. Watercolor will work. Distress paint, dilutions, I'm going to show you some a little bit later using dilutions and distress, but inks, paints, anything runny or watery is going to bead up on the plate and have its own sort of naturally grungy texture. So I just wanted to show you this one that I did with a watercolor because I think it came out really kind of lovely. I love that. It kind of looks like, I don't know, tree bark or something kind of texture. So you can use a watery paint. That's another way to make a distressed or grungy texture. Now this next one is using baby powder. I've done this on my channel before. You've probably seen people do it. You just lay down the paint and lay down the baby powder, and it acts as a resist. So you pull up the print and it has the paint is missing where the powder is. So as you can see, you end up with something really grungy looking depending on how much powder you put down. I mean, be careful with the powder, don't sling it all about, don't inhale it, use with caution. But the more powder you put down, the more sort of grungy the look is going to be. And you can get quite a number of ghost prints off of this. That was the first one, and I think I'm going to get a second one out of it as well. And so this sort of baby powder method can be used with other sort of powders too, like instant coffee or brush show, things like that. So this next method is using water as a breaker, as something that will break your paint, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to break the paint to make this grungy texture, and you can use water. I'm using my Distress sprayer because the Distress one, it makes kind of globby. You can get it globby. You can get big droplets of water, not just a fine mist. And so I'm getting myself some nice big droplets on this paint that I rolled out, and then I let the paint dry. Obviously, the water's not going to dry, not that quickly anyway. So once the paint is dry, but the water's still wet, you go through and you wipe off the water droplets and you reveal the plate underneath. So now I can pull this print and I'm going to have a nice grungy texture after I pull this. Now, the smaller the water droplets you use, the more different the pattern, the texture is gonna look. Big droplets, you have a bigger sort of distressed or grungy look. Now this is the second way you can break with water, is just roll out the paint and then keep spraying it with water. It will water down on its own and it will just start to open up and break, as you can see here. Now this is just similar texture to what you would get using a watercolor or something like that, but if you don't have a watercolor, if you don't have a thinner body paint, you can use medium or heavier body paints and just water it down on the plate, and you see there, very nice and grungy. So that's the second way you can break with water. This next technique involves using isopropyl alcohol. Actually, this is the last technique. I did a bunch of different iterations of this, and this is probably my favorite way to break paint or other mediums to get a distressing grungy look. So you can use almost any kind of medium to do this. As you can see here, I rolled out my acrylic ink and then I sprayed it with some isopropyl, and now I'm letting it dry. I have this sped up so you can kind of see it drying in real time, and not real time, but in sped up time. And so once I have that layer on, I'm just going to roll on another layer and then spray that with isopropyl. And what this does is going to give you a really nice depth and and some color variation to your grungy print. So I put on another layer and then I sprayed it, let it dry. I'm putting on a final layer of acrylic ink here in the color copper. I'm gonna roll it out, spray it with the isopropyl, and let it dry. So there's 3 colors that I used, and I did the same thing on each layer. Rolled it out, sprayed it. I let it sort of bloom, and then I let it dry. And now I'm going to pull the print. After I did all 3 layers, I let everything dry, and now I'm going to pull it off. And as you will see, you get a really beautiful grungy texture, a nice depth, you get nice coloration. This is just a really cool method to achieve the grunge effect. Now this next one I'm going to show you is the same thing I just showed you, but using some different colors, and this one's probably ended up being my favorite print of the session. I'm just using some Liquitex acrylic ink in a beautiful fuchsia color, and it's the same thing. I'm spraying it with my isopropyl, and I'm letting it bloom, letting it dry, rolling it out. And see, but what I'm doing different here is I am using a sheet of scrap paper to pull off some of the paint color. That's another way you can get yourself a nice grungy distressed pattern on your paper, is to physically remove some of the paint from the plate and then cover it over with some additional colors, or pull it, exactly as it is. But you can sort of manually remove the paint instead of just doing the breaking that we've been discussing. And so I added another orangey color on top of that pink, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this with some metallic paint. Now you've seen me pulling with metallics a lot during this session. You see how beautifully this one came out. There's so much depth to it, right? Now I'm just going to go through a series of pulls where I used isopropyl alcohol to create these looks. And what you see off in the corner, what just showed up, was what I used to make the print, and this was acrylic ink. Now I was mentioning that I've been doing my pulls with metallic, my Arteza metallics, because those metallics just really give these prints a lot of luminescence. Like, they just really pop when you're pulling with those metallic paints that have that nice sheen in the background. So that one, I forget what that one was, what medium I used for that one. I didn't read it. But this is the Dilutions that I mentioned previously. Dilutions is a pretty light body paint, and so you can use these techniques with Dilutions very well. You can use it on its own, but if you want to sort of control, have a little more control over the breaking, you can use it with isopropyl. Now this one was just an archival ink pad that I stamped all over the plate and then sprayed with my isopropyl. You see this beautiful effect that I was able to get just using an ink pad. This next one I did using my distress acrylic paints, which also are lighter bodied paint like the Dilutions. And of course, with the distress, you have so many colors available for this technique. And I also pulled this print using my Arteza metallics, and so you saw that nice sheen in the background. This second one is just another iteration of my distress acrylic paint pulls, and I really like this one because it kind of had like a fabric-y sort of look to it, I think. And this final one I did using a super black, beautiful India ink. And also I pulled this one with some metallic paint as well. You can see that shimmer in the background. Now for all of these alcohol pulls, I was using 70% isopropyl alcohol. You can use 91% if you want. That the percentage doesn't truly matter, but I was using 70. Now you see me here doing my recap, as I like to do. Now you did not see me do nearly all of these prints because this video would have been 12 hours long if you had. So I had a really long grungy gel printing session, and I have all of these prints left as a result. And so if you like some of these, I'm going to put a good number of them up as digital downloads digital download paper on my Etsy shop. So if you want to go ahead and pick up some of these, you can check out the link in the description and you can print these out whenever you want. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please go ahead and leave me a like, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I hope to see you guys next time, and in the meantime, keep creating and making. Bye bye.